Lawrence H., a patron of Flourish, asks, I don't know much about the escalation die from 13th Age. I know you've played that system, and I'm wondering if you think an escalation die might provide benefits in a 5e game. Absolutely. I think the escalation die is a really great, simple mechanic that we can drop into almost any D20 based game, but it certainly works well in our 5th edition D&D games, and I'm going to talk about a few ways how. So as a summary, the 13th Age escalation die is essentially a D6 that sits on the table during every battle in 13th Age. On round 2 of combat, you put it out with a 1 on the die facing up so that everybody at the table can see that it's 1. And what that means is all of the players have +1 on all of their attacks for that round. On round 3, it goes up to 2. On round 4, it goes up to 3, and so on, all the way up until it's a +6. This way, as the battle is going on, the characters have a significant boost to their attacks when they're attacking monsters. Now, 13th Age is built around this idea, so monsters are actually a little bit harder to hit early on in a battle, and they get easier to hit as it goes. The 5th edition of D&D doesn't expect that you're using an escalation die, so the mechanics don't work exactly the same when you're using it in 5th edition. Now, in 13th Age, it only adds a plus bonus to the attack rolls of characters. It very rarely affects monsters. There are some monsters that have a way to use the escalation die, but it's actually pretty rare. Of course, we can change this in many different ways when we're using it in our 5th edition game. The 13th Age escalation die works really well in our 5th edition game, and we can use it in lots and lots of different ways, beyond just adding a plus bonus to the character's attack rolls. My first tip is that we should tie the escalation die to something that's actually happening in the world and in that scene. I don't think it's a general house rule that I would use for every battle. Instead, I would use it to show off an event that is escalating during the battle, in the story of the battle, and in the story of the world. An easy example would be like a necrotic pillar that is growing with power, and every round, the amount of necrotic energy that's coming off it is growing and growing. Maybe it's giving a +1 bonus to all of the undead creatures that are in there. Another one might be a holy fountain that is growing with energy, adding plus bonuses to all of the characters the longer that the radiant energy flows from that fountain. Above all, I would just tie it to some kind of in-world thing, and I would use it on a battle-per-battle basis rather than dropping it into my game and using it everywhere. Now, in 13th Age, the escalation die only adds a plus bonus to attacks, but there's no reason we couldn't turn that plus bonus to damage as well. The way 13th Age's damage works, it doesn't really make sense to add it to damage in 13th Age, but in 5th edition, it would make a big difference if you could add a +1, +2, +3 to all of your damage rolls. Of course, it's going to affect characters like monks a lot more than it's going to affect characters like wizards casting fireball. That really doesn't matter if you're only using it as a circumstantial bonus. It means that it could be really interesting for that monk when suddenly they're getting a lot of extra damage on every attack. Now, obviously, we can add the escalation die to our monsters as well. This has the advantage that monsters are getting tougher and more powerful the longer combat is going. This keeps the excitement of the battle escalating rather than de-escalating as the players are defeating monsters. Maybe as monsters are dying, the monsters that remain are getting a big bonus to their damage and attacks. Now, like I described, there are certain circumstances where the characters would be the one to get the bonus. There are circumstances where the monsters might get a bonus. You might have an arcane pillar that creatures can try to draw towards them. So maybe you're playing a little bit of King of the Hill, where as long as a character succeeds on an Arcana check, they can draw that energy and get the escalation die bonus to their side, where another NPC is pulling it over and trying to draw it back over to give it the bonus on their side. So that could be kind of an interesting tug of war that exists between two groups while the rest of the battle is going on. You don't have to tie the plus bonus of the escalation die to just attacks and damage either. It could represent other things going on in the game. Maybe there's an aura that is growing in size and power as the escalation die is going up. Maybe each pip of the die is another d6 of damage that this aura is doing. So it's growing significantly in power, more than just a plus bonus to damage. You can really think of the 13th Age escalation die as sort of a timer in the battle, and that timer can relate to a lot of different effects. We could even create Matt Colville-style action-oriented events that are occurring in our battle that take place at certain pips on the die. Maybe if the characters are fighting a bunch of vampires, on round 2, the first time that the die comes up with 1, that's the round when all of the vampires can move without provoking opportunity attacks as they all burst into bats or turn into weird creatures and run across the battlefield. Then on round 3, when it switches over to 2, that's the moment they all start getting an extra 1d6 per pip of necrotic damage added to their attacks. And then on round 4 is when an aura of necrotic energy starts blooming off of each of them, doing 2d6 or 3d6 necrotic damage to anyone around them. This is a way that we can see the battle escalating in all sorts of different ways, just by using that simple mechanic of a die on the table. The advantage of having the die sitting on the table is that the players understand that there is a mechanical effect going on, and they can see that escalation. It's building up tension in them the longer that the battle goes on, which makes it really imperative that they end that battle as quickly as they can. I think the 13th Age Escalation Die is a really cool tool. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's just a die on the table that goes up. It's basically just a timer that's showing the number of rounds that have occurred. But we can tie a lot of different things to this, and we can make some really interesting environmental effects that are scaling up the longer that a battle goes on. So it's a really good trick to keep in your DM's toolbox. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can help me out by subscribing to the Sly Flourish newsletter, subscribing to my videos on YouTube, supporting me directly on Patreon, or picking up any of my books. Thank you very much and have a great day.